Hi, book club members. I'm Jen,
And I'm Carrie.
and this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 32, and our book is Incarnation, the second book of the Horusian Wars by John French. It is about the continuing adventures of Covenant as he chases down the Triumvirate. Stop showing off. As he chases down the Triumvirate on a shrine world. We posted several questions while we ignored Carrie on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our discussions via Vox channel, YouTube, or our site. Spoiler warning, if you haven't yet read this book, go back, check out the book, and come back to this post, as we're going to be discussing it from start to finish in great detail. With that, let's dive in. First, as always, did you like the book?
That's such a loaded question. It shouldn't be,
is,
but it kind of is. So what I kind of come up with is that while I have a lot of questions, as in what was the point of a lot of it, and I don't feel like anything really happened in the book, at the same time, I enjoyed the scenes. They were still fun little rides. So it's just, yes, but actually no.
I think I had to settle on it's just okay. To your point, I liked a lot of the scenes, I liked a lot of the concepts, but overall, I would actually argue the first 3/4 of the book don't really matter. Really, the only thing that matters is Inna and Mylasa's story, which we'll get to later. And then, what kind of the revelations at the last quarter of the book. In fact, actually, as I was reading it, I was like, why is this book not just called Revelations? Or would that have been a little too on the nose? Because
they're trying to incarnate the vessel to take in chaos. Isn't that the Horusian method?
And kind of. I didn't even really get the sense that that was the point.
They were trying to incarnate something because they were talking about incarnation a lot.
They were, and this is a joke only for people of a certain age, but at a point, that and Revelation started to feel like Pee-wee's Playhouse, the word of the day. When they would say incarnation or revelation, I half expected everyone to go, run around. Cowboy Curtis would show up. Anyways.
God, I forgot about Cowboy Curtis. Anyway.
Excuse you, how could you forget about Samuel L. Jackson?
What?
Cowboy Curtis.
He was that was not Samuel L. Jackson.
No, you're right. Sorry, not Samuel L. Jackson. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. It's Lawrence Fishburne. Still, major black actor, Lawrence Fishburne. How could you forget about?
I thought that
Lawrence
was the Cartoon
Fishburne?
King.
No, he was Cowboy Curtis, and he showed up with the. Anyways.
Yes.
So, what parts stood out to you? Because I know that we both said that we liked a lot of the parts and less of the whole. But what parts really grabbed you?
There's a lot of the revelations kind of grabbed me. Because I was texting you late at night, like, oh my God, because there was so many, I just did not see coming.
Right.
And some I did, but not in the actual way that they manifested.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the parts that kind of stood out to me was really anything with Judge Orsino in it, because she is now my new favorite character, because she is, first of all, she's old, she's a badass, and she's hysterical.
Can I tell you that I read her voice in Katharine Hepburn voice? Because apparently that's just my bad bitch voice.
Oh, I read it in Judi Dench.
When she executed the soul.
That's actually the part that I marked in here. Just when it happened, she's like, sentence of execution reached and carried out. Just that just makes all the sense in the world why I just killed this guy.
I loved that, and I loved when the abbot was like, you can't, he starts to object, and she's like, do you want to argue?
Or what was it? She said that there are three other ways that could be worse in her judgment or something like that. It's okay, just don't mess with this woman, right?
Well, and I loved in that whole scene, because remember the abbot walks in and he sees her and he's like, oh my God, I've never seen an inquisitor. This is amazing. And she's
that was funny.
Not me, buddy. And then Covenant's kind of a disappointment compared to her.
Well, right, because he's just oh my God, it's just a man. Because No big deal. And I think it's just because she had that, her judge's headdress and all that. She looked the part.
He looked the part, but I did like when he sees him, and I imagine that after a moment he probably would have had the same real revelation with Orsino, but just the idea that, oh, it's just a person. Like, it's not this angel or saint or messiah figure. It's just a dude or a dudette.
Right. You're not getting the same, like, awe-inspiring that you might get from a Primarch.
Or like a saint, or even one of the Adeptus Astartes, even, right? Just this, like, oh, it's, yeah. So I actually really liked that. But that scene when he's like, oh, this is an Inquisitor. It's like, awkward.
No, but she has nearly as much power as one.
To be fair, yeah. And man, that scene was cold and amazing. She was just like, I'm gonna fix the problem.
Although, well, we'll probably get to this, but I have actually when we get to some of the revelations, I have actually a big question about that whole scene. So,
Fair.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm trying to think, what was the other scene? There was one that we'll talk more about this later, but I really liked the concept of Hesh. I didn't see the point of him, but I liked the concept, and I loved that whole scene with him when he basically shows up and he's like, yeah, I am the keeper of forbidden knowledge. And everyone's like, ugh.
I think I would both want that job and not want that job.
Right. But I liked the idea that even, like, just the way that all of them were like, ugh, yuck. Like, this guy's creepy and weird. And it amazes me. I'm continually amazed that in a universe of grim, dark, awful people and awful things, they find new ways for people to be like, ew. On the other hand, I loved the astropath in this book.
Oh my god, he was sassy and delightful.
Oh my god, he was so wonderful. Some of the stuff that came out of his, I was reading it, I was like, the whole time.
I was like, he's like, stop smiling. How do you know I'm smiling?
It's like, I don't need to see you to know.
Right.
I loved that. He was just kind of generally fun, and that's a big thing. I feel like that's a growth moment for me, since I generally hate the astropath.
Well, they are creepy.
They're really creepy.
I feel bad for them mostly.
I felt really bad for him, especially because they talk about how he's just like this old, frail, like decrepit thing. And it was really funny to me when he was like, when Glavius 4 Row was supporting him and carrying him, because I was like, oh, that's kind of an odd couple, isn't it? Glavius 4 Row was amazing in this book too, by the way. He remains my favorite character.
Oh yes, the stuff that they're questioning him and he was arguing back. It was great.
Oh, it was wonderful. So, a lot of focus, bridging that in, a lot of focus in this book was given to his supporting characters. Namely, I would say Joseph, Viola, and Cleander, and their various maladies and or personality quirk.
Mostly first off, maladies, I would say.
Mostly maladies, because Viola...
She's a drug addict.
Total drug... Yeah, let's just start with Viola. So, total drug addict, and inherently kind of a broken person. She's more of, in classic Warhammer 40k style, she's less a person and more a tool.
Right, and she knows that, and it's the reason why she's a drug addict is because she's actually an information addict. Like she can't function without constantly seeing information going in on her eye, so she has to be on drugs to actually sleep, and then she has to be on them so deep for her to sleep, and then she has to be on a whole bunch more to even get up. And what a way to live.
I can't even imagine. On the other hand, like I can't imagine what it must be like her to be her. Like, have you ever left the house and left your cell phone at home?
You feel naked.
And you feel naked, and you're just like, oh, what do I do? Even though like 20 years ago you were out constantly without a cell phone.
Right.
But it's just, so I can't even imagine if you had basically a HUD at all times and just constant information that, yeah, when that turns off, you would feel
Right.
Yeah. So when I was reading it, I was like, damn, lady, like that's really profound. But they spent a lot of time talking about like how, oh, I memorized all of this stuff and I had to learn all of this stuff. And at the end of the book, I remember thinking, that's nice. And
Yeah, so you went to savant school. I think we already kind of knew that based on
mm-hmm,
how you were last book. But
right. I don't know how I was supposed to feel. Like when they were talking about all of the stuff and how she memorized and all and she learned all these things, it really felt, you know what this book felt like? Stephen King famously talked about killing your darling. And he would talk about how he would write these cool backstories and these character notes and these little deep delves into the characters, but then he would have to cut them because they ultimately didn't serve the story.
mm-hmm.
Parts of this book really kind of felt like they were John French's darlings. Like that entire section with, well, this is how I learned, and I had to learn these little sing songs and do all of this. Cool story, bro.
Yeah, and the whole book, I kept waiting for all of that to kind of come together. But then when I got to the last, oh, I would say even 100 pages of the book, I'm like, you know what? I just realized something. We have not come into a point where I know where this plot is even going.
Yes.
And it was like the last maybe 50 pages, like a plot was coming together. But I was like, there's no way we're resolving this by the end. And of course we didn't.
I actually had that same thought when all of a sudden I'm reading, and it's actually at the part where Joseph reveals that he's dying. All of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, they're still outside of the monastery. And I did a real quick flip to the book, and I was like, we've got like 20 something pages left, or 30 pages at that point. How the hell are they getting off this planet? I was actually waiting for some giant Deus Ex Machina to swoop in, especially since at that point, or like a few pages later, they tell Viola, they're like, we've got signal from the surface. So I was like, oh, somebody's gonna swoop in a gunship or something like that.
Or teleportation.
So, what importance does Viola's story have to this story?
Ma'am. So, this book reminded me a lot of Mass Effect 2, which I didn't even think about the shirt that I'm wearing. Not now, I'm calibrating my calibrations shirt, but Mass Effect 2 did not have a good plot. It had great character development.
That's true.
And that's really what you cared about. And then you get, but there's all this build up to something amazing happening, right? You're in that suicide mission. I can already hear Jack Wall's soundtrack in my head, and it's just an amazing scene because that's the first time you see, if you didn't do certain things, your characters are dying. And it all builds up. And then you get to like the final thing, the big thing, and you're like, seriously, that's what it is? And then you leave and you start to wonder, well, what point did any of that have?
Oh, you know what? That's actually a good point. And we'll talk more about this in a bit. But really, Mass Effect builds up all of this stuff just to reveal that he's not cigarette smoking man, Martin Sheen. That Martin Sheen's not on the level. And you're like, huh, okay. I kind of pieced that together from the beginning.
Yeah, and so then you kind of stop the collectors from building this human Reaper, which was just really far-fetched and kind of pointless. Like, I don't understand what the point of all that was. And there wasn't any point. Basically, the point was for you to have this big epic battle that you could actually lose. If you didn't do a whole bunch of things, you could actually die, like permadeath. The concept, so it's again like this book, the concepts are great and the character development is great, but you get to the end and you're like, well, what was that all about? Like, what does that have to do with like the overarching story?
Right. So let's bounce over to Viola's brother Cleander. Okay, you've got Eldari tech in you. Weird.
I don't see what the big deal is. That was actually one of my questions. I was like, so Cleander has this Eldar tech. So?
Like, on one hand, okay, you probably don't want Eldari tech in you, especially something that you don't understand how it works. And the Eldari definitely play the long game. So it's entirely possible that some Farseer was like, okay, so this dude's going to end up working for an Inquisitor, so we should have some type of bug on him, but... Okay. Like, either take him out to the shed and give him the old Yeller treatment because you can't pull it out of his spine, or okay,
Mm-hmm.
it almost I I'm hoping it pays off in another book. Like, I'm hoping that eventually we get to like another book and we're like, oh, that's why that's important. Like, it is like an Eldari plot. Surprise Harlequins. Um,
God, no. No more Harlequins.
um, but yeah, that was the whole thing too. That I was like, weird. Other than it shows, and this was another thing that was kind of weird. Is I was like, okay, are they supposed to show that he's a little morally casual when it comes to the Xenos? Okay, well, he's a rogue trader, so yeah, that kind
That
of
was
goes with the
not a
territory.
shock to me. I mean, this is kind of
No.
the tricks of the trade.
And the whole story with him and that race of people who had the gemstones, I was like, none of this makes sense. Like, him double
I
crossing them to
okay,
the
so
Eldar, and I was like, this is kind of
I actually like
dumb.
read that like 2 or 3 times because I couldn't follow what was going on, and I realized it wasn't entirely me. There were actually some nouns missing in the text.
Can we talk as an adjacent side? The editing on this book
It was
was bad.
terrible. There was spelling mistakes
Spelling
galore.
mistakes galore. There was one section where somebody was thinking something, and usually they italicize when it's internal voice. The internal voice was not italicized, and the he thought to himself was italicized.
And I don't know if you had this in your book, but in my book, there was a line that was everything, but the everything was hyphenated. So it was like it might have the manuscript was hyphenated to keep it justified, and then they just didn't
Yep.
remove that in the actual book.
Yeah. There's a few things like that. And yes, there were several words missing. So this book, I wonder if it was rushed. But yeah, that made it hard. And but there's spelling errors in that section made it hard to understand. And really I was like, none of this makes sense. So you stole this and they sold you to the Eldar, but then you double crossed them, and I don't
Yeah,
care.
it and in the end it was like, okay, so long story short, you swindled a whole bunch of people, and now the Eldari, for whatever reason, I don't understand how they got you, but they do, and they installed this tech into your spine
Right. Well, because the guys like
for
sold
giggles.
him to the Eldar. Yeah, like, but again, they're playing the long game. But all I can say is that better have a payoff in a future book, because that was, I was like, huh, this is a weird little dalliance. But then when you look at Enic right? So then let's finally talk about Joseph, because I know that Joseph is one of our favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole story was, I didn't like him as much in this book as I did in last book.
I mean, I didn't feel any different about him. Yeah.
I think I already figured out that he was dying. I really didn't need them to spell out for Iaso that when they go back to the scene with him and Iaso talking, and she's like, "You're dying," and he's like, "Yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine."
Oh yeah, I mean,
I kind of figured that
you
out.
kind of figured that out when he met with Orsino, and she's like, "Are you okay?" Or even before that, when he coughed, and he was like, "I'm doing everything he could to not cough again."
Hmm.
I was like, okay, so you're definitely sick with something you don't want anybody to know. And then he, fought that guy to prove that he's fine, he's physically fit, whatever. And then he leaves and he almost collapses. I'm
Right.
like, okay, so you're obviously not fine. You're most likely dying because nobody in this universe ever gets sick and gets better.
No. Well, and I guess I found that really like kind of just like chewing page space at that point, because it was like, no, I figured that out. I didn't need that spelled out for me. And I also kind of, what was the point? Like the idea of him dying, okay, I get that. That's very sad. And I like the idea that he clearly, I already inferred that he clearly is just going to keep fighting until he collapses. I mean, this guy's going to keep going.
He wants to be there for Covenant and help him as long as he can, and doesn't want Covenant to worry about him because Covenant will tell him to stay and, try to get
Mm-hmm.
well or just rest, and he doesn't want that. And I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
But With this book, though, is one of my questions here. I wrote, why have Joseph dying? Does it even matter? And especially since
Right?
the end of the book, which I assume did have the volcano finally erupting.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think the whole planet was destroyed, at least not yet, but definitely the monastery is gone.
And I mean, if it's a volcano and the surrounding area, I don't know if you've ever seen a volcano explode, but it like goes out. Uh,
Right.
that's
I
not
mean,
a small
basically,
thing.
that continent is fucked, basically,
Yeah.
on that side of the planet.
So
Uh,
I can't imagine that him, Agatha, Coleg, Orsino, or Covenant get out of that unless by a literal miracle.
well, I mean, the abbot came back with a divine mission. Maybe he was able to send. I don't know. But if Joseph does die in that volcano eruption, then what did it matter
Right?
that he's dying?
Right. Like,
So,
why did I need to know this,
so
really?
if he's did get out, then it will matter. But as it stands now, it's hard to see why that even mattered. And and
Right.
maybe all the things I wrote down here will all come together
Mhm.
in the next story.
Maybe?
But this is too many unanswered questions for one
Very
story.
much so. Very much so. I would agree.
Because one of my questions I wrote down was, like, first of all, like the Red Pilgrims. Like, what was the point of the Red Pilgrims in Crade? What
We'll talk about that in a second because I have the same questions.
Okay, so like, why destroy the monastery at all? Why would Memnon want to help the Red Pilgrims when they clearly say that they were a surprise? They didn't expect them there. So why would he make those
Okay.
orders to the bishop to go on ahead and release that, and we're just going to destroy the place, cover their
Well, let's
tracks?
talk about that. Let's talk about the Wanderer in general. So he's a key figure in this book. What all of his machinations arguably fail? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Where
I mean,
was anything compelling? Like I got to the end of the book and I was like, I don't even have a clear sense of what you're doing because I had the exact same questions. The Red Pilgrims are a surprise to you, but you kind of want to help them, but then you're also a little surprised. I mean, again, you're surprised to see them. They're clearly not working with you, and they're clearly not part of the vessel. And he's looking for the kid. Remember, he's quizzing Zillida what happened to the kid, Enna, and
Memnon was.
Memnon was, yeah.
Mhm.
But he's asking Zillida about it, which I'm like, but you already know she's off the planet, so what do you care?
Okay, so that's the other thing. I wonder if he knows.
So,
Because I don't think they knew, because if they knew, Idris would not have made her be one of the renewed.
so more about that. So, in the beginning, this is why I had to
story.
go back.
Like, not just how you were saying that. Like, so fun story.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So this morning I texted you and I was like, wait a minute, I just realized something. And I had to go back and I had to reread sections of the beginning because if you recall in the beginning when the high priest, the sorceress, and the wanderer are all talking,
They're all in a
sitting
bar.
there. A high priest and a sorceress walk into a bar and the wanderer says, "Where's the covenant?" So funny because they're all together. Anyways, they're talking specifically about the child. Remember, they say they're surprised about Dominicus Prime, like it's there again. And they ask about the child, and Idris / the sorceress is like, oh, well, no, but the child disappeared. Like, we don't know what happened to him. And then Memnon changes the subject and is like, oh, yeah, but what about your assassin that you sent after Covenant? And she's like, oh, she was just some ganger girl. It doesn't matter. So, riddle me this, Batman. Was that did John French forget that he wrote that section, or was the Wanderer, were they basically trying to exit the Wanderer stage right? Because if I have learned nothing about the Inquisition, it is that these guys are plotting on plotting on plotting on plotting, and everybody has a knife at each other's throat.
Oh, yeah.
So, was this whole thing, did they send him on a fool's errand knowing there was nothing down there? just to exit him stage right? Because that whole chapter is basically full of them bullshitting him.
So, right, but so what I got from all of that is and I have like so many questions about that too, because and they find out that it's Argento who comes and takes her before we find out, spoiler warning, before we find out that the high priest is actually Argento. So I guess Covenant didn't kill him like he was pretty darn sure he did. So the guy, he was soft dead. So anyway.
Right.
So Argento took her, but then what happened after that? Because they were looking, and they see, okay, well, hold on. They see the prospect is going to be Dominicus Prime, which they say makes no sense because they know that the child is missing, that she's not there, but maybe she's come back, so that's why they kind of go and look. So if that's the case, if she really was missing from Argento somehow, either he knows she's the renewed, because I can't imagine Idris taking this child that Argento would want, this potential witch, and making her renewed.
Okay. So jumping forward a little bit into Inagairid's story there, I actually wonder if that's exactly what she did. Because remember, she shows up and she's talking with Inna, and she's like, she's asking her name, and she says, oh, well, the man gave me this name. And she goes, yeah, I bet he did. And Asia, then Enid, a.k.a. Revelation, a.k.a. Asia, says to her, well, is the man coming back? And Idris says, no, he's never coming back. So part of me wonders if she took the child, like, what? Part of me wonders if she saw that the child was super dangerous and brought her to Iago to then make her renewed, so that then she's basically blank and she's controlled. Oh God, I'm about to reference X3. And
okay, really so that would fit in that idiom for sure, with the Horusian idea of controlling chaos.
She's basically put on ice, and I'm about to reference X3, and I'm really sorry. But if you remember, and you're in the abortion of a movie that was X3, when they revealed that, I hate this movie so bad in this whole plot, but it's similar, so it makes sense. Bear with me here. But they revealed that Jean Grey is such an incredibly powerful, potent psyker that they can't really control, that the professor basically imprisons her within her own mind and puts shackles on her so she can't use her powers. Anyways, the professor would never do that. I've had wine. But I wonder if it's something similar where they were like, oh, we can't control this thing. We need to put it on ice. Or, like, was that something that both Argento and Idris both decided? Or was it just Idris taking a look at this and being like, take her out. She's too unstable. We need to, blank her, basically. Which is the perfect cover story, right? You blank her entirely, give her some meaningless ganger background, and go forth.
Maybe. But then the question is, does Argento know? And I can't see him sending Memnon there to see about prospects if he does know. Because what a waste of time, right. Which does add up the whole book. But
right, but if you're trying to exit him, if you're trying to kill him, which it's like the mechanism of assassination. It just dawned on me as I said that they could just literally just jettison him out of an airlock and nobody would ask twice.
Right, like there was no need to go through these great lengths.
Would have made the short story a lot shorter. I don't know. So were they actually looking? Well, I mean, they did say that something was going to happen there, and then when you look at what happens to the abbot, something happened.
Yes, and
it just wasn't what they thought it was going to be.
They did find an almost prospect as well. Let's see. Anyway. No, that's not what I was looking for. But trying to find, because like I think he says Memnon was a great loss, and Idris is like, is he?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, actually. He
Well, I think they knew that some event was going to happen, and I don't think the divination is an exact science.
Well,
They
no.
just know that something's going to happen. So a saint, well,
It's not much different than what the Grey Knights use with their prognosticators.
right. So, and that, I mean, I guess actually that dawns on me. That does ask the question, was the abbot, I mean, I'm assuming the abbot was a saint, but was he potentially the prospect? Like, because they don't really find an outright prospect, right? They find the dude, they find the prophet of hate, the cred,
Okay,
something like that.
All right, I'm pretty sure Argento doesn't know, because in the epilogue, it says, well, actually, no, she's the one who says the Wanderer is a bad loss, and it's Argento that says, is he? He's like,
Well,
yeah,
I think maybe he sent him down there on a fool's errand.
he might have, but then he says, no, because she asks him, well, you gave the answer to Memnon when he asked. It is a crucible of fate. Those were your words. Did you lie? Argento says, no. But after the loss of revelation, I just thought it was done. The two went together, child in place. That another prospect should arise there after all this time. For a while, I wondered if somehow she was still there. I don't think he knows.
So Idris, well, and that's really funny because remember later he's kind of bitching at her and he's like, you could never hide your emotions or feelings from me.
Apparently she just hid a whole child from you.
Right. So what's her end game in all of this then? Is she a double agent?
Because the weird thing is, because Argento was a Thorian, I believed.
And apparently a Horusian too. Because remember, they actually talked about in the first book that was one of the reasons that they kill him.
Well, it's because
he branches from Thorianism to Horusianism.
Okay.
And they're like, "Ooh, that's not good." But apparently Idris was like, "That's fine." Or is it? I don't know. I have so many questions.
I'm wondering, like, if her long game is that maybe she's not really Horusian, and this whole thing is a diversion to kill them all.
It could be, right? Because I mean, the best place to
in plain sight.
No, who was it who said that? I think it might have been Teddy Roosevelt. But it's better to be inside your enemy's tent pissing out than outside pissing in.
That sounds like a Teddy Roosevelt thing.
It sounds like a Teddy Roosevelt thing to say. But it's perfectly right. Like, where else to control these people but than to be on the inside with them? And that in particular, she's clearly moving some levers, but then also so is Argento, since I really do believe they knew that an event was going to happen there. The event wasn't quite what they were hoping, so they destroyed the whole monastery, which, why though?
Yeah, what was the point of that?
I don't really understand.
The only thing is, like,
other than him being angry because there was another Inquisitor there.
Or covered their tracks.
That could be too.
This is how they decided to kill Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty elaborate way to do it, but, omelets and eggs, right?
Oh, that's the Imperium way, to be fair.
Right. Let's just kill everybody here.
I just didn't really have a clear sense of what... Yeah, who, what, when, where, why, how. Like, he gets there, oh my god, the kid's gone, the Red Pilgrims are here, Covenant's here, so fuck it, just destroy the place.
Just kill them all.
Okay.
All at once. Obviously, you can't... They're basically, I think they were waiting for the prospect to appear. It didn't appear, with Memnon's experiments, and they didn't see it appear, so just burn the whole fucking place down.
Right. Just
peace! We're out.
Pretty much. I mean, it really is. It's literally just flipping the game board over, right? They built a hotel on Boardwalk, and now the game's just done. So that was a little weird to me. But let's talk really quickly about the Prophet of Hate and the Red Pilgrims, because it was this constant threat and this. But ultimately, I
There
didn't
was
even
no
think they
point
were
to any of it.
I didn't think they were even that important to the narrative.
No,
Like they were
they're not, because I thought that they were maybe working like hand in hand, or maybe the prospect they're looking for was going to be this reborn, the true prophet of hate
right.
rising. Well, we never got to see if he did or not, because the prophet of hate was supposed to rise with the destruction of the monastery. Well, the book ended before we could see the prophet of hate actually appear.
Right. And more importantly, they seemed very relevant when they were going through Asia's story. Because remember, they talked about how there was kind of this unrest and uprising in the background,
Right.
which so I was like, oh,
Well, yeah,
okay,
there
well
was
that
that
makes
link
sense.
to it, because that the Kraid, the false prophet of hate, the harbinger, basically said that this whole thing started with a false saint's tears, which was
Right.
Asia's story,
That happened at least 10 years ago,
at the very least,
at the very least, right?
if
So,
not 20 or 100.
right? It's Warhammer 40k, so who
Right.
knows, right? It literally could have been 200 years ago, and everyone would be like, seems legit. And we don't really understand how the renewed work either. So, like, I guess I was really surprised by that, because as soon as I realized that Asia's story was in the past, because again, I was reading aloud to my husband, I even said, well, what the shit are the Red Pilgrims doing? Is this a second uprising? Like, what is the point of this? Have they just been laying low? Because if you recall, remember they talk about Kraid coming down to the planet in the very beginning. Like it is entirely possible that he's just been pilling for like 20 or 30 years, right? Because they do mention that it seems that the corruption spreads very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this has been growing. Maybe this is a cancer that's been growing. I don't know. Question mark, question mark.
Well, it sounds like this is where Asia's from
Oh,
as
for sure.
well. So, and that kind of corruption that ended up killing her grandfather, those
Hmm.
horrible people that killed her grandfather, and then her psychic powers arose at really the wrong time in front of a whole lot of people. Um, it just kind of seems like there's something about this planet as well. There's this root there with the corruption. So, what a better place to
Right.
build a monastery on top of a volcano
Right.
covering up corruption?
Which that's a theme that gets explored a lot in Warhammer, actually. And I don't know if I'm getting tired of it, if I'm just like,
It's like their own Indian burial grounds that they're building on top of.
it pretty much is. Thank you. Yes, that's pretty much. I mean, it's. At this point, I was honestly expecting the poltergeist speech at the end. You moved the headstones, but not the bodies. Like, there's something cursed here, and okay, but again, and like,
Right.
okay, again, I felt like so many of the elements of this book, I found myself going, cool. So that was one especially. Let's talk about the real meat of this book, though, shall we?
What is the real meat?
Inagairid. So it, and boy, they really dragged that one out. Um,
Right.
so my Lhasa go, which I did like getting a little more of a glimpse into my Lhasa. By the way, that little sassy interaction she has with Severita,
Mm-hmm.
where she's like, "We can't all be self-loathing." That was
Yeah, that was
particularly nice.
delightful. Like, I always like it when they stick it to the Repentia, because they annoy me.
Right. And Severita too, I did like though when she's like, you know that I'm here to protect you too, right? Like, she's got a point. Um, I found that kind of fun. That was a fun little interaction. But so my Lhasa, like, oh my gosh. So first off, what does this mean for the people who are on board the ship? Because now they have unlocked, they've basically taken an exceptionally potent and unstable psyker, woken her up, and she's on a ship. That seems like a really bad place to have her.
I guess they can turn the ice back on.
That's true. My Lhasa, though, is she trapped in there with her? Because she's scared at the end when she's like, you're too powerful for me to be here.
Well, and she gets shot.
Yeah, that too.
And Nakura shoots her, doesn't kill her because Val deflected the bullet, but it still nailed her in the shoulder, which can still kill a person.
Yeah.
And they didn't really kind of mention it. Yeah, she's on the ground. They mentioned there's blood everywhere, but just.
They mentioned that the Medicae and Severita are fine, but they don't mention Mylasa.
No.
And I was like, assholes. Because I like Mylasa as a character. She's very interesting. There's clearly something awful and tragic there. But
well, she's a psyker with the Inquisition.
Psyker, yeah, right.
So,
true.
Yes.
True. But the fact that she's all shriveled and she just kind of exists in this form, in her mental form, right?
Mm-hmm.
But oh my god. So first off, let's start with, did you see that coming?
What Enna was?
Yeah.
No.
Oh my god.
No. It was like when it
dawned
on me. I think it was the word revelation is when it dawned on me. Now I will say that Mylasa's peeling her mind like layers of an onion.
Like an onion.
Those passages were brilliantly written. I especially love the one that you actually had to read backwards.
Yeah. Look, this actually reminded me a lot of the first book. If you remember when that woman starts having the psychic incident, and all of a sudden Mylasa's like, oh, how did I not see this? But the woman losing her grip on reality with the blink. That was so well done, and this was so well done when all of a sudden they're here, and then they're here, and Mylasa's going, you tell me where we are.
Right, and this is the whole retrace your steps. Retrace your steps. And I was like, well, yeah, it's still coming out of order. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. So then I reread it backwards. Like, oh, there we go. That's brilliant.
Yep. So good. So brilliant. So smart. That was actually, I put on Facebook one of my favorite GIFs of all time when the guy gets the sick burn in and he's all smug and the guy's like, that was me when I read that section because I had the same reaction when I was like, oh my god, it's being told backward. It's like Memento in a story form. It was done so well, and I have to admit that I did not see that coming at all.
No, just when I think, like I said, it was that word revelation. When it clicked who she was, I was like, oh, okay. Because the whole time I'm reading these parts of the Asia, I'm like, what the fuck is this?
What do I care?
Who is this, and why does this even matter? And I just kept hoping that it would, and yes, it did, thankfully. And when it clicked together, it was very well done. Like I actually went back and reread some of the passages with the italic passages with Asia, and understood them. Like I got a little bit more out of it. It's very, very, very well done.
Right. Once you understand that that's in the past, as soon as it clicked with me that I was like, because at first I kept thinking, I was like, oh, this is going to be some little girl and Covenant's going to have to shoot her and it's going to be really sad. And then when it was revealed that it was Enna, oh shit. That was lovely.
Yeah, there's a few I didn't see coming. Like I didn't see Argento coming.
That one I kind of pegged. So moving on to the high priest's reveal surprised you. That one, I'd actually even said that at the beginning of the book because I don't remember what he said. There's a line, I'll have to go back and find it, but he said something about Covenant, and I was like, I bet you that's Argento. And sure enough, because we knew that it was Idris, right? Was the sorceress,
right? That was already declared last book.
The Bal one, I knew that he was going to be a double agent of some type.
Right. I did too, because he was too helpful. I watched enough NCIS reruns with my husband to know that the one guy that's overly helpful always is the murderer.
Well, he was just a little too familiar, right? Yeah. And the scene when he's like, well, why don't you shoot me? Well, you're just not going to do a very good job if you shoot me. I was like, that's exactly what an assassin would tell you to do. So I was definitely expecting
I knew he was a plant. Cross. But I did not expect him to be a renewed.
Right. When he started coming to her and they talked about he suddenly just goes very cold and monotone when he's talking to her. I was like, oh no. And then when he pulled the coin out, like, god damn it. I really wanted there to be some Bal Viola romance, and now you just can't have that. Because why we can't have nice things. Now you can't have that. because he's a fucking renewed and
So here's the other question.
clearly working
So,
for Idris.
so Ninkura, was Memnon's agent, and obviously Bao is Idris's agent, who just killed Memnon's agent. It's like Enna is more important than you realize. So it's like, yeah, she knows. And so that's the only reason why she wants her back is that you took my toy. I need my toy back. I'm not worried about what you're going to get out of her, but or is it that Idris is going to be double playing Argento, and so Enna is in Covenant's care?
Could be.
I like how I talk myself into different theories during this. Like, I'm like, I don't think so, but no, wait, actually it is, because this did happen, and yeah.
It's actually one of the things that I love about when we do this podcast. So everybody gets a little theater of the mind here. One of the things, not theater of the mind, stream of consciousness here, that I do like that a lot of times when you start talking about stuff. So famously, when we used to do our comic podcast, I read an issue of a series called East of West. I don't recommend it because it took like 5 years for him to finish it. I don't know if you remember that, when I was just enraged about this comic and I was like, what the hell is going on? None of it makes sense. And I started walking through it, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh my god, it was in the past.
Yeah.
We were seeing the past. It's one of my favorite things about this, because as we start talking through, all of a sudden you're like, oh, tumblers start clicking into place.
Right. But we did the same thing, with Spear of Emperor as well, and even with Lucas.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of fun. So first I'm like, wait, how dumb do I sound? But then I'm like, no, just the more like you talk it out, realize like, oh, wait. That's what the brilliance with like talking about books.
Hey, we should start a podcast about that. Anyways, I kill myself. But yes, and that's one of the things, like, does that make her, like, Idris has already told Argento that it's just some ganger girl, who cares? Does that then make this the perfect hiding place in Argento's little pet, which we're going to talk about more in a second here? Like, it's just some ganger girl, who gives a shit if Covenant has her? Does that make her that the perfect hiding place?
Again, hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. Right? Like, that doesn't matter. It's just junk.
She's a nobody.
Yeah, she's just some gang girl that I picked up, which I just absolutely, again, as soon as they revealed Idris coming and picking her up, I was like, oh, honey, you're playing a dangerous game, Idris.
But it was Idris. Man, I wish I had the other book here. You know what? I have my notes. No, I wrote this down. It was her. That said, God damn it, I just wrote down the page number. You talk about, how basically the Inquisition, because they all have this free reign and they all have these different ideas on how to handle this free reign, the only way to sometimes come to a resolution is through violence. And she, tells Enna, trust no one, and is like, I'm not sure I would know how to do otherwise. Because that's how the Inquisitors roll. They don't trust anybody.
No, literally nobody. And, right, so it's hiding in your, like, yeah. So let's talk about that really quickly, because I was not surprised necessarily. I was not necessarily surprised that was Argento. I was surprised out of my fucking mind about the whole, he gave him the name Covenant. Especially when you look at the fact that he gave Acia her name Revelation. So, what does this mean for Covenant? Wild speculation time.
I don't want him to be renewed. That made me so sad.
I'd be a little crushed. And how effed up would that be?
To
have a renewed Inquisitor.
I will say, though, I always thought his name was weird. At least now there's actually...
Oh, it's a weird name, right?
At least now there's an actual reason why he has this weird name. It's not that John French was like, pulling the names out of the hat and was like, this one sounds cool for an Inquisitor. Little on the nose, maybe, but sounds pretty cool. At least I know it's not that.
Well, no, I thought Covenant was an established character. Somebody's gonna have to tell me if that's a thing or not. But I thought that I read that that was an established character from like one of the things. But anyways, doesn't matter regardless.
It's still a weird name.
It's still a weird fucking
established
name.
or not. And for an Inquisitor, it's very on the nose.
Actually, it would actually make a lot of sense if it was established because it has all the subtlety we expect from Games Workshop. Corvus Corax, nevermore. But I like the idea
of a 2x4.
Exactly. So that was one of the things that because I think I even made a joke about this last podcast, or when we talked about the first book. I had mentioned that I was like, could he have been anything other than an Inquisitor with that kind of a name? I like the idea that he's given it this reason that, yeah, this is a made-up name. But why, though? Does Covenant remember this?
Argento's, his end game is now, we were always wondering, like, what is Idris's end game? And now we're still wondering what is her end game. But what is Argento's true end game in all this?
No idea. What was he doing with Covenant? What does he want really? What does he really want with Inna? What's he gonna do when he finds out about that? Did he send Memnon on a fool's errand? What's the average rainfall in Brazil? I don't know.
What's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
African or European?
What? I don't know that.
So, I mean, yeah, there's all of these questions surrounding him. And to your point, like, don't get me wrong, I don't mind ending a book where I have a few questions, but there were a lot in this book. Okay. When I got to the end, it was like...
But it's not about ending the book with a lot of questions, because we knew this was... Or we at least had an idea this was not going to be the final book. But I'd like a book with a plot, please. Because it just didn't seem to be one. And if there was one, it was meandering, and half of it didn't matter anyway. So I can't really call that a plot.
I would actually call the plot, if I had to point to the central plot of this book, it would be who is in a Gyrid. Mylasa goes on a journey to find out who in a Gyrid is. Everything else that's happening around it is entirely superfluous. Or, I mean, I guess you could argue that the question is who is in a Gyrid and what is Idris's endgame with her.
But we didn't need
you guys
2/3
like a quarter of the book. Yeah, that's like a quarter or maybe a third of the book at best.
Right. Well, yeah, because you got to take in the ACA chapters too, so it's a third.
Okay, that's fair. Then yeah, it's a third of the book. But so, riddle me this, Batman. Where the fuck do they go from here? Like, okay, so let's say the monastery is blown up. That takes out Covenant. That takes out Kotlik. That takes out Orsino. That really should take out Joseph and Agatha, who I really like.
I liked her too.
That then leaves Team Dionysia, which is, I forgot that ship is an internet term for a second there. That leaves Team Dionysia, which is Viola, Cleander, Severita, now Bao, apparently, and Mylasa. And
I guess the Chief Medicae. She's wormed her way into being a part of this, so...
Yeah. By the way, carbuncle is a disgusting word. So when he kept describing her carbuncle eyes, I was like, is she a worshiper of Nurgle? Anyways. So... None of those people are Inquisitors, last I checked. Not even an interrogator.
You didn't even have an interrogator.
Nope. So now what we have is potentially the Antichrist on board with a bunch of rogue traitors.
And that's traitor with a D, not a T-O-R.
Right. Rogue traders who we have already established will pretty much do anything to get a bargain or to get their dynasty back, and they have the Antichrist on board with them. I feel like things are gonna go less than well.
Except that that somehow Covenant's not dead. The question is, who else lives with him?
Well, so let me ask this. I thought divination, and I haven't really looked into this, even though I own the book, I haven't even looked at it. I thought divination was more a bunch of short stories about his entourage and less a progression of the story.
I haven't looked much into it either. I am curious, though, because my limited edition came with an additional short story in the back.
Oh.
About Joseph. Told from his point of view.
Aren't you fancy?
So I'm curious if that same short story is in Divination.
It could be. And I would have sworn, I guess I could look this up. I do have the most powerful information tool available. What is it?
Divination.
I would have sworn that I read that it was just like a little bit of short stories.
Maybe it's like the Magos. It's a bunch of short stories and a novella.
Yeah, in this anthology are tales of the allies, rogues, agents, psychers, and killers who aid him in the battle against darkness. So, well.
Generic.
Quite generic, actually. Let's see. Every tool is necessary in the war against chaos, and herein are 11 tales of such gifted, devout, and sometimes terrifying individuals. So, it sounds like it's more of like background story, and kind of like, I would actually argue that this book was too. Because this book was pretty much who was in a guy raid, and oh, by the way, did we mention that Viola and Cleander are kind of jacked up? Oh, and Joseph's dying.
Well, we kind of knew Cleander was jacked up last book because they talked about his alcohol problem.
Cleander's got problems. So does Viola, though. The life of a rogue trader is not easy, especially a disgraced rogue trader. Which I would
and one that went to savant school. In case you didn't know, she went to savant school.
Did she?
Yeah, they mentioned it like once.
That must have been hard. Tell me more. Actually, so one of the things that I would really like them to go into in Divination is how they become indentured to a Inquisitor, because the document that gives rogue traders their power and their ability has a drop of the fucking Emperor's blood on it. So, like, I'm just curious as to how that gets revoked. Maybe it has something to do with the Eldari technology in his back. I don't know. Anyways, I don't know where they go from here. And quite frankly, I'm at the point where, and I think we talked about this earlier, I don't want Covenant to be dead. But on the other hand, I'm going to have a lot of questions if he survives. And if he survives because of some divine intervention, okay. But everyone else better be dead, because then I'm going to still have questions. I managed to save only me and my 3 cohorts.
Or does Idris, the one who somehow saves him?
Oh, God. Watch it end up being interesting. Covenant getting together to team up against Argento. Can you imagine that awkward-ass conversation? Okay, sorry that I'm still alive. Awkward. But Argento's still alive. But I need you to not focus on that right now.
And so now I'm thinking of Airplane, but that's not important right now.
That's not important right now. Nor is the fact that you have the goddamn devil spawn on your ship.
She's a nice devil spawn.
So charming, as was Val. And that should have been my first tip. The fact that he was very charming and he was really cool.
I guess my tip should have been, and Viola was like, I don't know you. I kept saying that over and over again, just really, really forcefully. I was like, okay, maybe we're not supposed to trust this guy at the outset. No, guess that should have been our real tip.
That should have been our first tip. And I mean, there were a variety of things, actually, that should have been. The fact that he was really fast with his guns, because you remember they talked about how really fast, like Severita talks about how in a guy raid, she's like, look, Severita's like, I move fast. But this woman's unlike anything I've seen. And they kind of talk about that with Val when she throws the coins up in the air.
I kind of liked it, though, that she made him throw all of his coins.
And that he was a generic ganger background, kind of. Like, they must all have, like, a same template. Like, what is that movie? Blade Runner. Where they all kind of have a generic template background. I kind of liked that idea. But I was also a little brokenhearted too. But I have no idea where they go from here. Like,
Me neither.
okay, what do they do? What do Covenant or what do Cleander and Viola do? Just dust off and then hope
I,
they go,
your guess. I
go
mean,
find the nearest friendly Inquisitor bar and be like, we need a new Inquisitor.
is there places like that? Is there a place where rogue traders can go and be like, I need a new Inquisitor? We lost
I have
ours.
no idea. I have no idea. But maybe it wouldn't surprise me. They stumble across Eisenhorn. He's like, funny story. I need a ship and a crew that doesn't ask questions.
That could be fun.
So weird. Can you
In
imagine?
a really weird way, but it could still be fun.
Like the best crossover event ever.
All right, let's make this happen.
Let's make this happen. Or
I'm,
let's
like,
see.
tucked into it.
Maybe the Inquisitor from the Grey Knight book, or
Nah. No.
there
Oh, wait.
has to be another interesting. Oh, maybe the Inquisitor from Rachel Harrison's book. She needs more crew, anyways. After she lost her wife, she and Viola, I feel like could have a really good time together.
Oh, you mean Mark of Faith? That
Yes.
book? Oh my god, but I hated her.
She was an awful person, but you know what? I mean, maybe that's or maybe the Inquisitor from Rites of Passage. That lady was a badass. I'm sure that they could show up and be like, yeah, so our previous Inquisitor friend is gone, and she'll be like, I got you, fam. She had a cool entourage too. They could
She did have a cool entourage.
blend, and there you go. I don't know. Do you just put in a Craigslist ad? I don't know.
I'd like to think that they go to their, local pub. It's like an RPG. You go to your guild lodge, put out an ad. I need a new clan.
LFD, we have a savant and a pilot. Need Inquisitor. I mean, to be fair, they really are almost a full party.
And ask the bartender if there's any news going on and go on some side quests for a little while.
Do you have any rumors or news? Aye, we've got rumors and news. The local shopkeep is up to no good, I tell you. Yeah, pretty much. That could actually be a lot of fun, I'm just saying. But, I mean, I got to the end of the book, I was like, okay, so like half the party got killed.
Possibly.
And they're like important. And if they don't get killed, I'm going to be very, again, I'm going to be
You
very...
want Covenant killed? He can't be killed.
I don't want him killed, but when you set up a literal volcano explosion beneath his feet, he better fucking be killed. Again, to the soap dish argument, her head was cut off. He is dead. He has ceased to exist. He should be pushing up the daisies. I have very strong feelings about this.
I don't think he's dead.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I'm pretty sure he's not.
The reason...
If Divination is not a continuation, if it really is just a collection of short stories, then we're going to have a third book because there's too much left out in the open. And yes, it is called the Horusian Wars and not Covenant's Adventures, but he is still like super important. Besides, did you notice he had his own paragraphs of his point of view?
Oh my god, by the way, that shocked me. At the end there, when all of a sudden they were like, Covenant did this, and I was like, whoa, are we actually getting to see something from his point of view? It wasn't that illuminating, per se.
No, but no, it was. Because he actually talked about how, for the first time in many years, he was afraid.
Yes, it's true.
And he was talking about, and it wasn't just fear he was going to die, it was the fear of failing again, is what he kept saying. But again, anyway, he is still like the main character, even though he is, but he isn't. He is the Inquisitor in this whole thing, so he has to live somehow.
Well, he's the one with the badge. Everyone else is just super fun and super cool and can do all of this stuff.
I'm going to believe that before Iacto burned away forever, he somehow whisks them off the planet. It wouldn't be the best plot device, but there's got to be some way that they got off. At least Covenant got off. And if he gets off, it better be Judge Orsino too.
Oh, dude, if Orsino doesn't get with him, I'm going to be really angry because I loved that character. She was too awesome. And yeah,
You're not going to like the next book no matter what, it sounds like.
That's not true.
Oh, whatever. You're going to be mad if he's dead. You're going to be mad. No. But then what's it going to be about? It's not going to be the same, so you're going to be upset about that. You're going to be mad if he stays alive. There's no pleasing you, woman.
No, I will only be mad if he's alive. I'm very curious as to where they're going to go if he's dead. I have faith that the next book is Josh Reynolds. I have good faith that John French will figure out something for them to do with the lack of Covenant. I'm concerned because to your point, the whole book situates around him, and the fact that Argento basically hand raised or clearly molded and formed this individual with a very certain purpose in mind makes me think he can't be dead, which is going to irritate me. So it better be something super compelling and interesting as to why he's off, and not just, oh, right before Iacto died, he bamfed me off the planet. Anyways, I would actually be okay with him being dead, though, because it would be interesting to see where they go from here. What do they do? I don't know what you do when you're beholden to an Inquisitor and the Inquisitor dies. You know, we had the same questions at the end of the second Vaults of Terra book. Hollow Mountain. Remember at the end when Crowell was like, all right, you guys, I gotta go and take some time to clear my head. We were like, what does an Inquisitor and an entourage do without their... Actually, we made the same joke. That what does she do? Does she just put out a Craigslist ad? Go on LinkedIn?
But at least she's an interrogator. She's not, totally, this foundling who can't do anything on her own. I mean, like you said, she has the Imperial fists on speed dial. So, she's, I think that I see more of a success story than this without Covenant.
Well, apparently Cleander has the Eldari on speed dial. He just needs to figure out how to, play his back in the right tune, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, oh, that guy.
It's got, adjust his spine like a TV bunny ears antenna. Got to get it just right.
What if Iaso did that? What if with her playing with it, somebody all of a sudden was like, oh shit, do you remember that guy?
He's still alive? Oh, I guess we should go see what he's doing.
Is he still working for an Inquisitor?
That would be awkward. Especially if Covenant is still alive, the Eldari just show up. Be like, no, we're here to help you. Yeah, that could be interesting. I mean, at least Covenant's Malleus and not Xenos.
True.
Play with that a little bit.
True, but can you imagine, if a Vrain or one of her people shows up and is like, our bad.
Oh my god.
Here we are to help you. So, the one thing I will say is this book read very fast because it was pretty thin, which I cannot say for our breezy beach reading. Manflayer. At the size of this book, you guys, I'm really excited. But actually, do I still have it out? No, I don't. I had held this up to the other Fabius Bile books. He had some stuff to say in this one. I'm really excited.
Yeah, this one's nearly 400 pages. But real quick, and go over my one little question that I had.
Oh yeah.
With Orsino killing Sewell. Knowing what we know now, and knowing that Sewell was actually going to strike down the bishop, is it possible he knew what was actually going on?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. No, he was panicking. He was straight up panicking. He was in flight or fight, and he was all the way flight. So that was him just being like, you are not telling me that I am not leaving. Because remember, she was like, you need to get a hold of yourself. Because the whole time he's like, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. The Red Pilgrims are coming here. So no. But would he have been doing the world a favor? Arguably, yes.
The volcano wouldn't have erupted.
The volcano would have erupted, and I bet Memnon would have been a little harder pressed to figure out what to do if Scylla was dead.
But the reason why I think he might have known... Yes, he was indeed panicking. He was not expressing... He was not using his words well. But the fact that he was looking at her and her response was anger and surprise. Not
That's
just,
true.
What the fuck are you doing? The anger is what kind of got me. It's like, that's interesting. And then looking back of what you find out, she's really kind of a traitor. I was like, wow, did you know something? And did you know that we're all going to die if she lives? Did you know something about how it all works?
I just don't think so. Because, I mean, nobody knew. The abbot didn't know. He didn't suspect. Clearly, Agatha
Well,
didn't
but,
suspect.
okay, but the abbot's on the lower end of the totem pole. This guy's the archdeacon, or the archdeacon.
Right, but you remember she says later when she's talking with Memnon, she's like, the secrets that I have kept and the lengths that I've had to go to. So, and remember that nobody knew about the child. They found a random dude's journal that has, like, hidden allegations to it. This is stuff that has been, like, deep state buried, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he did. I think he was just in his flight or fight. I gotta get off this planet, and you are not gonna stop me.
I don't know. Might be a little... He might have known
Could
something.
be, though. Who knows? You know what? Honestly, either way, I wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
If John French was like, no, he totally knew, I'd be like, makes sense.
Seems legit.
Seems legit. I mean, the corruption clearly goes deep on this planet.
And the only way to get rid of it, I guess, was with the volcano.
Yeah, I should say it went deep. It no longer does. Deep because it's a volcano. Anyway.
Yeah. So this is our next book. The
I
last...
look forward to having this on a beach.
Yes, because we will be on a beach next week.
Damn Skippy. And together, the book club is going on vacation. It was originally supposed to be Hawaii, but they say that Georgia is the Hawaii of
the East Coast?
Continental, the United States. Literally, nobody says that.
No, but it is an island. We are going to the Sea Islands.
That's true. So it's going to be really exciting. And if this doesn't scream breezy beach read, I don't know what does.
Right? This should be on everybody's beach reading list.
Pretty much. I mean, it's like, a Jodi Picoult book, the next 50 Shades of Grey book, and Manflayer. Top beach reads.
Actually, I thought you were saying that this is like a Jodi Picoult book and the next 50 Shades of Grey all in one, because that's not too far from the truth.
That's not too far from the truth. It's going to be depressing, and there's going to be some kinky ass shit going on in the background. So, seems legit.
And a lot of medical stuff, because Jodi Picoult likes her medical dramas.
Actually, I would be like, I could have just imagined some of the Emperor's Children reading 50 Shades of Grey and being like, fucking casuals. This does not please Slanesh.
True that. All right. Well, thank you all. Yeah, thank you all for listening to the Warhammer 40k Book Club episode regarding Incarnation by John French. Be sure to join us for our next book, Manflayer by Josh Reynolds. We are an unofficial book club and are not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and the podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you liked this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Don't forget, we also have a Patreon where we offer 2 different tiers of content for your viewing and listening pleasure. You can learn more about that at patreon.com/WH40k Book Club. Our site also has articles about our adventures in reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read from a crag. Good night, everybody.
Good night.